Welcome back to Hardball. As Robert Mueller continues his investigation, President Trump, conservative pundits, and allies on the Hill have continued their aggressive campaign to undermine the special counsel and law enforcement altogether. It's seemingly part of a larger effort to push a counter-narrative to help delegitimize him and his investigation. That would be Mr. Mueller. Let's watch.
This bias is like an infection. It's like an incurable cancer that's inoperable, and we've got to end this Mueller probe.
The only evidence that we've seen thus far on collusion is with the Clintons or the DNC, one with the dossier that I know you've talked about, but also then with Uranium One.
There's a Uranium One deal. That's treasonous.
There's now allegations that both in the FBI and in the Department of Justice, there basically was collusion to try to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. This kind of group of people that has such enormous power needs more oversight, not less.
And now, according to Politico, Trump's top henchman, Congressman Devin Nunes, is leading a covert group of Republicans in running a parallel investigation. A group of House Republicans has gathered secretly for weeks down in the Capitol in an effort to build a case that senior leaders of the Justice Department and FBI improperly and perhaps criminally mishandled the contents of a dossier that describes alleged ties between President Donald Trump and Russia. The goal is to highlight what some committee Republicans see as corruption and conspiracy in the upper ranks of federal law enforcement. The congressman has been an outspoken critic of the Russia investigation for a while, and it's not the first time Nunes has expressed his concern about law enforcement agencies. Here he is just a few weeks ago on Fox.
I hate to use the word corrupt, but they become at least so dirty that who's watching the watchmen? Who's investigating these people? There is no one.
Well, his campaign seems to be working. NBC News has learned that on the orders of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Justice Department prosecutors have begun asking FBI agents to explain the evidence they found in a now dormant criminal investigation into a controversial uranium deal that critics have linked to Bill and Hillary Clinton. For more, I'm joined by Ken Delaney, a national security reporter for NBC News. He broke that story. And Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. attorney and an MSNBC contributor. Thank you both. What is the rights of, what is they supposed to do? In other words, in Trump's administration, does he have a right as president to go around looking for anybody in these agencies that may not like him? Legally. Ken?
I mean, within reason, Chris, you know, we have a tradition in this country of independence of the FBI and the Justice Department, but it's just that. It's a tradition. It's not really enshrined in law. In theory, he can go in and order that investigations be started and order that they be finished. But, you know, there are political costs to that, and that could be deemed an impeachable offense, particularly if it was thought that he was obstructing an investigation into his own conduct.
Barbara, same question. Is this proper for the president to go fishing around, checking people's registrations, what they've written, what op-eds they've written, how they talk to their neighbors, finding out their politics, and more importantly than their politics, what they think of him?
Yeah, this is another example of how norms are being burst in this administration. There's no legal prohibition on it, but the norms have always been to permit the independence of the FBI and the Justice Department and to be separate from partisan politics. In fact, there was a wall between communications when I was at the Justice Department, between Justice Department lawyers and the White House, to prevent even the appearance of partisanship. And so digging into people's politics and opinions is really very different from anything we've ever seen.
Let's talk about this uranium deal. I think it's a stretch on the part of the critics, on the part of Nunes, the Republican leader, and the Intelligence Committee. This idea that it's something that had to be approved by all the cabinet secretaries was somehow, they're portraying it now as some kind of underhanded backroom deal, all covered in darkness, that somehow Hillary did for her husband, when in fact it was signed on to this uranium deal with the Russians by all the cabinet secretaries, every one of them in broad daylight.
You're absolutely right, Chris. The more reporting we do on this at NBC News, the more it becomes clear that there was no national security risk here. There was nothing. There's no evidence of any impropriety. This was a unanimous decision by the federal government, by the 9-member CFIUS commission that decides on these things. And Hillary Clinton has said that she played no role in it, and nothing has contravened that. Now, what we're reporting today is that the Justice Department is now going back and taking another look at a criminal investigation that apparently went on into this whole question of how this deal was approved and then some contributions to the Clinton Foundation. It's not unheard of for the Justice Department to take another look at a case, not necessarily improper. I mean, after all, Eric Holder, when he was the Attorney General, took another look at CIA interrogations after Bush administration lawyers had cleared those CIA people. So that's not unheard of, but it does start to raise the hackles in the context of everything else you're describing, which is a concerted campaign to try to change the subject and divert attention and talk about things that Hillary Clinton did instead of the obvious investigation into Donald Trump.
You know, Barbara, it does seem that what's happening is the Republican Party, I shouldn't say all Republicans, but those who are particularly loyal and allied with the president, seem to say, you know, we can't defend him anymore. This guy Mueller's too good. He just keeps getting closer and closer. He keeps bringing people to his side, like Flynn and others. He's basically rolling it up close to the president. So instead of trying to play to the president on like the 3rd-yard line, they're trying to go to the other end of the field by saying, oh, wait a minute. We're going to grab the ball, and we're going to head down the other end of the field, and we're going to prove that there's something amiss with this minerals deal, this uranium deal, or that it was someone that shouldn't have been working for the Mueller investigation. Even if Mueller fired him, he shouldn't have been there in the first place, and we'll make that the issue. Isn't that what's going on? It's a scorched earth policy, it looks like to me.
Yeah, and it seems like an effort to discredit and undermine the investigators, not only Robert Mueller, but also the FBI. And I think that is such a short-sighted and selfish perspective, because not only is this investigation going on, but all over the country, the FBI is investigating thousands of cases: bank robbery, extortion, kidnapping, human trafficking. And all of those cases are going to end up in court where jurors, members of the public, are going to be asked to assess the credibility of the FBI agents who collected the evidence in that case. And it worries me that they're going to be hearing in their head the words of the president that the FBI is in tatters, or these concerns that they're unfair in some way. And I worry about the effect it's going to have on the fair administration of justice all over this country.
I think he has contempt for the government. Anyway, House Republican Jim Jordan from Ohio, who is also an outspoken critic of Robert Mueller, indicated that he had spoken to the White House about the Mueller investigation. Let's watch him in action.
Have you had conversations with the White House, not about the questions you ask, but about the Mueller investigation in general?
Well, I've talked with the White House about all kinds of things. We've had talks with the White House about tax policy. We have talks about welfare policy. We've had talks about Obamacare. Of course, we've had talks with the White House.
Well, what's that about, Ken? And by the way, it looks like this is a partisan deal. Only 6% of Republicans in our new NBC poll think there was any collusion. What's that? 1 in whatever? I know 6%, like 1 in 16 or something. That's like nothing.
Yeah, it's really another example of how there are almost parallel realities in this country. But look, the idea that the Republicans are coordinating with the White House to sort of counteract the Mueller investigation should shock no one. I'm sure that, you know, the Clinton administration coordinated with congressional Democrats when Ken Starr was investigating President Clinton. The question is, are they crossing the line? Are they making charges that are really unsupported? If Devin Nunes has evidence of corruption at the highest levels of the Justice Department, I would like to know about it so that we can report on it. But until we see some evidence, I think we should be very suspicious, because Devin Nunes was the guy that brought us, remember the unmasking scandal that basically fizzled because it turned out that, you know, revealing the names of Americans inside the intelligence community was something that sometimes has to happen, and it's not a scandal at all, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to back to Barbara for the last question here. It seems to me that what they're trying to do is undermine the prosecution. And that means they could perhaps demoralize it a bit, although that may work. They could discredit any finding by Mueller at the end, or they could basically set the Republicans up in the Congress not to do anything with his finding.
Yeah, it does seem, you know, I know there's been some speculation that they're laying the groundwork to fire Robert Mueller. I think a more likely scenario is laying the groundwork to delegitimize any findings he makes later. And so if you can create this skepticism about Robert Mueller and the FBI now, that when they ultimately find evidence of interference with the election, you can say, well, we told you all along he was unfair, that the system was rigged, that this was a witch hunt, et cetera.
You know, Ken, last question. I get the feeling that what they're really working on is, suppose it looks like Mueller is about to get evidence that the president obstructed justice with regard to this Russian probe. And that's what he has. In the end, that's all he's got. He doesn't have any collusion evidence about the president personally, but he does have a few bodies along the way, like with the bridge closing in New Jersey. A few people go to jail, but the big guy doesn't. All they have on the big guy is he possibly obstructed justice. I wonder if the House would act on that. I don't care how well it's written.
I agree with you, and I agree with Barbara. That is the game here. They are playing to the 30% of Americans who vote in these heavily Republican House districts, and these are the House members that are going to have to decide on the question of impeachment unless the House changes hands in 2018, Chris.
Well, and still won't get the vote in Democratic hands till 19. But you're right. That does change everything, Ken. Thank you, sir. Ken Delaney and Barbara McQuade. Thank you